As African CEOs navigate uncertainty, do they hold the key to unlocking the continent's next wave of growth and innovation? Good morning. It's another power-packed episode of Business Week. This week, Okonjo-Iweala, Nigeria's own, secures another term as WTO boss. Orange, the telco giant, teams up with OpenAI and Meta to bring African languages into the AI spotlight, and ECOWAS pitches an ambitious railway corridor to link member states and boost regional trade. Meanwhile, in France, Nigeria and France strengthen ties with strategic economic agreements, and across the continent, African CEOs are tackling uncertainty head-on, says KPMG's Africa CEO Outlook report. I'm Rolake Akinkunmi-Filani, helping you catch up as always if you missed out on the week. Stay tuned. Let's take a look at global energy commodities to start off the markets review. Brent was up at the end of trading on Friday by 0.22%, but however, prices have been down by almost 3% throughout the entirety of the week, as it seems like a ceasefire might finally be in the making between Israel and Hezbollah in Gaza. And WTI was up also by 1.05%. All of this happened late on Friday, right? Don't be deceived. Throughout the week, prices were pretty bearish. Natural gas was also up by a whopping 2.93%. And RBOB gasoline too, tracking Brent there by 0.73%. Let's take a look at equities markets. Of course, starting with Nigeria, the all-share index is down by 0.28%. However, it's been a record few months for the all-share index on the Nigeria Stock Exchange. Despite the fairly bearish end to the week, the index closing the week at 97,506.87 deals, 7,554 deals, volume of deals at 515. Not so great compared to previous week's value of about 15.08 billion naira, and market capitalization ending the week at 59.10 trillion naira. Let's take a look at African equities markets. Well, a mixed picture across board. Johannesburg was trading down at the end of week by 0.33%. Ghana in Accra was flat, ending the week at 4,694.66 points. Casablanca in Morocco was also down by 0.34%, but Nairobi, the big winner at the end of the week out of all these four indices, was up by 0.8%. Let's take a look at Wall Street. Wow, it's a green sweep in Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrial Index, S&P 300, and the Nasdaq Composite Index were all in positive territory at the end of the week. Markets really loving incoming President-elect Donald Trump. Let's take a look at my top picks from the week. First, this is good news for brand Nigeria on the international stage, because our very own Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was reappointed as WTO Director General for a second term. Why is this great news? Well, all 164 members of the WTO voted unanimously to reappoint her. Now, she's made a lot of sweeping reforms in the WTO, championing trade reforms, helping to improve global supply chains, for instance, for COVID vaccines and whatnot. And she's done quite a lot for gender inclusion within the trade ecosystem. However, on the horizon, with Trump coming in and imposing tariffs on China, she will have to manage bilateral tensions between China and the US, because, you know, that bilateralism does threaten the multilateralism of the WTO that underpins one of its core principles and ethos. So we'll see how Okonjo-Iweala navigates global geopolitics on trade systems, but a big congratulations to Okonjo-Iweala. My next story here is that ECOWAS states actually, and small businesses will benefit from a proposed $25 billion railway link that will connect Lagos to Accra, Accra to Dakar, along the entire coast of West Africa. This is good news for the 14-member ECOWAS regional body. We've been talking about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and how it's going to promote intra-Africa trade, which is somewhere between 15 to 20% today. Still not at the levels we want it to be, but this is good news because this will be the single biggest this piece of infrastructure to tie all the markets in West Africa together and facilitate trade. Now, we understand that ECOWAS has commissioned feasibility studies, which will be completed somewhere in the next 2 to 3 years, with a view to implementing and executing the onboarding of this project by 2035. Seems like a very long time away, but for infrastructure developments, that's a pretty ambitious timeline, but nevertheless, a good development. There have been a lot of announcements around infrastructure projects within the Africa sub-region. Some have not seen the light of day, so we were watching this one very closely. Orange, French telco giant, is partnering with OpenAI and Meta, formerly Facebook, to develop customized language models for Africa. Now, the app is going to be rolling out new language models that will cover almost 20 African languages. It's starting with languages like Swahili, Yoruba, Hausa, Zulu, whatnot, and it will onboard another 20 languages in the coming months. This is good news because we've been talking about the ethics around artificial intelligence, generative AI, and some of the inbuilt biases around that. Now, what Orange is going to be doing with OpenAI and Meta is to train around 10,000 African developers to actually train these language models. So this is really great, not just for technology on the continent in terms of job creation and innovation, but also in terms of inclusion and diversity insofar as technology is concerned. So good on Orange and OpenAI and Meta. And of course, who doesn't love a great technology story? Sanofi, global pharmaceuticals giant, is launching a $595 million modular vaccine manufacturing plant in Singapore to prepare for global pandemics. Now, nobody wants another global pandemic, but this move is actually quite critical to the global manufacturing of vaccines. Sanofi will be partnering with Gavi, the Global Vaccine Alliance, and the World Health Organization to see this plant come to life to prepare vaccines that tackle everything from influenza to COVID-19 and whatnot. And of course, for Singapore, which is Asia's biotech hub, that biotech hub adds around $65 billion in GDP to Singapore. So this is a great boost for the Singapore economy. And finally, France, Nigeria, all eyes have been on Paris in the last week, on the occasion of President Tinubu's state visit to France to deliberate and have discussions with President Emmanuel Macron and his government. Now, they've signed around $3.5 billion in economic partnership bilateral agreements covering everything from technology to infrastructure to agriculture to energy. Now, there were quite a lot of Nigerian businessmen in attendance at that, and there were other deals done between the private sector and the public sector. And more importantly, actually, it was also on the occasion of the opening of the Paris branch of Zenith Bank, which brings the number of Nigerian banks with a presence in France to around 4. And from what we understand, other banks will also be following suit. So quite a whole heap of activity there in France. The key is where these deals ultimately lead, how they contribute to strengthening the partnership, not just between both countries, but also helping contribute to economic development and commerce and enterprise in Nigeria. That's it for my topics for the week.